The Mandalorian tricked everyone. It looked like a simple bounty of the week Western set in the Star Wars universe, and for about 2 episodes, that's exactly what it was. But the first real choice Din Djarin makes doesn't just change the show, it rewrites the entire genre from the ground up, starting with a contract that smells wrong from the moment he accepts it. The asset and the contract. Here's the thing about Din Djarin's contract from the client. Everything about it screams, don't take this job. The client is surrounded by stormtroopers in grimy armor. He operates out of a back room on Navarro with Imperial credentials that shouldn't exist anymore. And his payment? Pure Beskar steel stamped with Imperial insignias from the Great Purge. That Beskar was stolen during a genocide. The Empire systematically confiscated Mandalorian heritage, melted down cultural artifacts, and now they're using the spoils as currency to hire a Mandalorian. It's like paying someone in their grandmother's wedding ring and expecting them not to ask questions. But Din takes the job, because the guild code says you take the job. He tracks the asset to Arvala 7, fights through Nikto mercenaries, and finds a 50-year-old infant. Grogu, same species as Yoda, completely helpless, worth more Beskar than Din has ever seen. He delivers the child, gets paid, gets his armor reforged, job done, except it isn't. Din goes back, he violates the guild contract, storms the client's facility, and pulls Grogu from Dr. Pershing mid-experiment. Pershing wears a Kaminoan cloning emblem and is obsessed with Grogu's M count. Whatever they want this child for involves midi-chlorians, bioengineering, and a dead emperor eventually waking up on Exegol, which is, you know, not ideal. But here's where it gets complicated. Din doesn't just rescue a bounty, he accidentally triggers a Mandalorian adoption ritual. The armorer declares them a clan of 2. A bounty hunter who never removes his helmet now has a son. 3 loyalties collide in this single decision. Guild prophet says deliver the asset. Imperial hierarchy says the child belongs to the remnant. Mandalorian creed says foundlings are the future. Din chooses the creed, and that choice transforms a simple Western into something far darker and far more personal. But if you think rescuing a baby from one Imperial scientist is where this ends, wait until the entire Bounty Hunters Guild activates every fob on Navarro simultaneously. The Navarro Enclave and the client's betrayal. Here's the thing about Din Djarin's decision to rescue Grogu. It doesn't just break a contract, it breaks the entire world he operates in. The moment he walks out with the kid, the client activates an open bounty. Not a single hunter, every hunter. Every fob on Navarro lights up simultaneously, and suddenly Employee of the Month is the most wanted man on the planet. Grief Karga leads a full street ambush with every trigger-happy lowlife on the payroll. Din is pinned down, outgunned, and about 30 seconds from dying in a gutter. And then the covert reveals itself. The Children of the Watch, hyper-religious Mandalorians who survived for years by never showing their faces, blow their cover entirely to save 1 man and 1 child. Jetpacks light up across the skyline. It's genuinely incredible to watch and genuinely devastating in hindsight, because that exposure costs them everything. When Din returns later, he finds discarded armor and empty tunnels. Years of hiding, gone in minutes. But here's where the real villain steps out of the shadows. Moff Gideon arrives with death troopers, and the first thing he does is execute the client mid-sentence through the cantina window. The guy who seemed like the big bad for an entire season turns out to be middle management that outlived its usefulness. The Empire eats its own, always has. What makes Gideon unsettling isn't the firepower, it's that he knows Din's full name, his childhood, the Night of 1,000 Tears. This isn't a bureaucrat chasing an asset. This is a war criminal who personally participated in the genocide of Din's people. The threat level jumps from local guild problem to the man who destroyed your civilization is hunting you by name. And in the middle of all this, the armorer sits calmly in the destroyed covert, melting down her own people's armor to forge something new. She looks at Din and Grogu and declares them a clan of 2. Then she gives him a sacred obligation. Return the child to his own kind. The bounty hunter show is over. The guild is broken. The covert is ash. And Din Djarin, a man who just wanted to do jobs and get paid, is now a single father on a spiritual quest with the galaxy's most wanted infant. But if the collapse of everything Din knew sounds bad, wait until you hear what it actually takes to find a Jedi in a galaxy that spent 2 decades pretending they never existed. The search for the Jedi. The armorer tells Din to find the Jedi and return Grogu to his own kind. Simple enough, right? Except every single person Din meets on this quest makes him question everything he thought he knew about himself, his armor, and his religion. It starts on Tatooine. Din finds Cobb Vanth wearing Boba Fett's old armor like a Halloween costume. The guy bought it off Jawas. He's not Mandalorian. He has zero connection to the Creed, but he's using that armor to protect his town, and he's doing a better job than most actual Mandalorians. If the armor works without the belief system behind it, what exactly is Din clinging to? Then comes Bo-Katan Bo-Katan cries on Trask. She takes one look at Din and basically says, "Oh, you're one of those." She calls his group the Children of the Watch, a cult of religious zealots. His entire way of life, the helmet rule, the rigid adherence to creed, all of it is extremism in her eyes. She wants to retake Mandalore and unite every clan. She doesn't care about helmets, she cares about a homeworld. But the real gut punch comes on Corvus. Din finally finds a Jedi. Ahsoka Tano communicates with Grogu through the Force and pulls out his entire history. Trained at the Jedi Temple on Coruscant, survived Order 66 by shutting himself off from the Force completely. A child who watched the Jedi die and chose to forget what he was just to stay alive. And then Ahsoka refuses to train him, not out of cruelty. She watched Anakin Skywalker fall to the dark side because of attachment. Grogu's bond with Din is powerful, and that's precisely what terrifies her. The old Jedi Order ripped children from families for 1,000 years, and it ended with Order 66. She's not repeating that mistake. Instead, she sends Din to Tython. Grogu must reach out through the Force and let a surviving Jedi choose him. The decision isn't Din's to make, it's Grogu's. Here's what matters about this entire arc. Every encounter strips away a layer of certainty. Cobb Vanth shows Din that armor is just metal without meaning. Bo-Katan tells him his meaning is extreme. Ahsoka tells him his love might be dangerous. And Din just keeps walking forward anyway, because the mission isn't about being right. It's about keeping his kids safe. But if you think finding the Jedi was the hard part, wait until you see what happens when one actually shows up on Tython. The return of Boba Fett and the Tython tragedy. Tython is supposed to be a sacred place. Ancient Jedi world, seeing stone at the top of a mountain ruin, the whole deal. Din brings Grogu there, sets him on the stone, and within seconds, the kid enters a Force trance so powerful that a column of energy surrounds him like a shield. Din can't touch him, can't move him, can't do anything except stand there and hope that whatever Jedi is out there gets the message before someone else shows up. Slave 1 drops out of the sky, and out steps a scarred, weathered, very much alive Boba Fett. The man who fell into a Sarlacc pit in Return of the Jedi, who everyone assumed was digesting for 1,000 years, just walks onto the battlefield like he's picking up dry cleaning. He's not here for Grogu, he's here for his armor, which Din took off Cobb Vanth back on Tatooine, and he's brought receipts. Specifically, a chain code embedded in the armor itself, proving that Jango Fett was a Mandalorian foundling. Not a pretender, not a thief who stole a suit, a foundling, raised in the culture, with legitimate claim to the armor. That single chain code closes a debate fans had been screaming about for 20 years. The Fetts are Mandalorian. Done. But here's where it gets dark. While Boba and Din are negotiating, Moff Gideon's cruiser arrives in orbit, and he doesn't send stormtroopers, he sends dark troopers. Fully droid, no human error, no morale problems, no hesitation. They drop from the ship like metal coffins, hit the ground, and start moving with a precision that makes regular Imperial forces look like they're wearing oven mitts. These things represent everything the Empire learned from decades of stormtrooper failure. Just remove the human entirely. Then a single turbo laser blast hits the Razor Crest. One shot. The ship that carried Din and Grogu across 2 seasons, their mobile home, their entire life together, reduced to a smoking crater in half a second. When the dust settles, only 2 things survive: the Beskar spear and Grogu's favorite little metal ball from the cockpit lever. The indestructible and the sentimental. Everything else is gone, and Grogu's trance ends just in time for the dark troopers to grab him. Din watches from the ground, completely helpless, as they fly his kid back up to the cruiser. Just like that, the entire nature of this show flips. Din is no longer escorting Grogu somewhere safe. He's chasing him into the heart of an Imperial warship. At least he knows where Grogu is. Getting him back is going to require an army. The capture of Moff Gideon. This is the single most stacked rescue operation in the entire post-Empire era, and it almost wasn't enough. Din assembles a strike team that reads like an Outer Rim all-star roster. Cara Dune, Fennec Shand, Boba Fett, Bo-Katan, and Koska Reeves. 6 people against a fully crewed Imperial light cruiser carrying a platoon of dark troopers. Boba stages a fake attack run to create an opening, and the team splits once aboard. Bo-Katan's group pushes for the bridge. Din heads for the brig alone. Here's where it gets complicated. Din encounters a single dark trooper in the hallway, and this thing nearly kills him. One of them. He only wins because the Beskar spear can penetrate their armor, and even then it's brutal. So his solution is to vent the entire remaining platoon into space. Except these things can fly. They're coming back. Din reaches Grogu's cell and finds Moff Gideon standing over the child with the darksaber ignited. Gideon says something that reframes the entire rescue. He already extracted what he needed from Grogu's blood. The experiments continue. This isn't a hostage situation anymore. It's a taunt. Gideon attacks. Din disarms him with the Beskar spear. And now the darksaber belongs to Din Djarin by right of combat, which is, not ideal, because when they drag Gideon to the bridge, Bo-Katan stares at that weapon and won't take it. She accepted the Darksaber as a gift from Sabine Wren during Rebels without winning it in combat, and Mandalore fell. She's not making that mistake twice, so now you have a warrior who doesn't want to lead holding the one object that says he has to, and the woman who desperately wants to lead unable to claim it. Then a single X-Wing docks in the hangar. Luke Skywalker walks through those Dark Troopers like they're made of paper. The things that nearly killed Din get dismantled in seconds. Every slash, every force push is a reminder that in this era, Luke is still the most dangerous person in any room he enters. And then comes the real gut punch. Din removes his helmet so Grogu can see his face. 3 seasons of rigid creed broken in a single quiet moment because a child deserves to know what his father looks like. Grogu touches his face. Luke takes the child to begin Jedi training. It's a victory, but it's hollow in 3 directions. Gideon's blood work continues somewhere in Imperial hands. The Darksaber has created an impossible political crisis between Din and Bo-Katan, and Grogu is gone, walking into a Jedi Academy that we already know ends in fire. But if you think losing Grogu and gaining an unwanted throne was bad, wait until Din has to actually fight for the planet that throne represents. The liberation of Mandalore. For 3 seasons, the show was called The Mandalorian, and it wasn't really about Mandalore. It was about a guy with a kid, wandering the Outer Rim, occasionally bumping into other Mandalorians who reminded him that a whole civilization was in ruins. But here, finally, the title earns itself. Din Djarin travels to Mandalore seeking atonement for removing his helmet, a simple religious pilgrimage. Except when he arrives, he discovers the planet is breathable, not cursed, not permanently irradiated, not the death trap that scattered survivors had been telling each other about for years. Mandalorians can go home, they just didn't know it. But that's not even the wildest part. Bo-Katan dives into the living waters to rescue Din and sees a living mythosaur beneath the surface. An actual breathing creature from Mandalorian legend staring back at her in the dark. For someone who built her entire identity around politics and military strength rather than spiritual belief, witnessing something that belongs in a myth is the equivalent of getting punched in the worldview. Hard. The coalition that assaults Mandalore is something we've never seen in this series. Children of the Watch flying alongside Bo-Katan's conventional warriors. 2 factions that couldn't agree on whether you're allowed to take your helmet off, fighting side by side against Moff Gideon's secret base. And Gideon has been busy. He's developed Beskar reinforced stormtrooper armor, which is the Empire literally wearing Mandalorian identity as a weapon against Mandalorians. Subtle as always. Here's where it gets bold. During the final confrontation, the Darksaber is destroyed, broken, shattered, gone. The weapon that drove 2 full seasons of political tension. The MacGuffin that made everyone ask who deserves to rule, obliterated by forces that don't even care about Mandalorian tradition. They just wanted everyone dead. And that's the smartest narrative choice the show makes, because the Darksaber was a trap. Whoever held it became a target. Whoever won it perpetuated a cycle of violent succession that had fractured Mandalorians for generations. Its destruction frees them. One symbol dies, another awakens. The mythosaur still breathes beneath the waters. Bo-Katan doesn't claim leadership through a blade or a duel. She claims it because she's standing there, in the ruins, having done the work. The Great Forge is relit. The gathered clans swear oaths around it. Not to a weapon, not to a bloodline, but to each other, and to the idea that scattered survivors can become a unified people again. It's a national rebirth built on collective will rather than a single artifact. For the first time in decades, Mandalore has Mandalorians on it who aren't fighting each other, but a united warrior civilization re-emerging in the Outer Rim doesn't go unnoticed, especially not by the people who bombed it into glass in the first place, the Shadow Council and Imperial Remnant. So here's the thing about everything we've covered so far. Din's struggles, the fight for Grogu, Gideon's cloning obsession, all of it felt like isolated incidents. One bounty hunter dealing with one rogue warlord. Turns out, no. It was one front in a galaxy-wide covert war, and we just didn't have the camera angle to see it yet. The curtain gets pulled back during a single holographic meeting. High-ranking Imperial officers seated around a virtual table, calmly discussing resource allocations and timelines like they're running a quarterly board meeting. Except the agenda items include planetary destabilization, secret armies, and the resurrection of a dead emperor. You know, normal Tuesday stuff. Here's where it gets unsettling. These people aren't panicking, they're not hiding in bunkers, they're architects. The warlord label the New Republic uses? Deliberate misdirection. The Council wants the Republic to think they're dealing with disconnected idiots fighting over scraps. Meanwhile, they're coordinating a shadow government with a long-term succession plan. Admiral Palaeon speaks on behalf of Grand Admiral Thrawn, and the way he invokes that name is almost religious. When he returns, he will unify us. It's a messiah narrative, which is darkly funny when you consider that the Mandalorians have their own mythic figures and prophecies happening simultaneously. Two cultures organized around the promised return of a legendary leader, except one wants to rebuild a civilization and the other wants to rebuild a war machine. Then there's Brendel Hux. Yes, that Hux, father of the Shrieking Ginger General from the sequel trilogy. He's overseeing Project Necromancer, the cloning initiative tied to sustaining Palpatine's consciousness. The sequel trilogy's villains weren't born in a vacuum. They were being groomed a full generation earlier. Armitage Hux didn't stumble into fascism. He was raised in it like a greenhouse tomato. And here's the internal comedy. Gideon's sitting in this meeting getting scolded. His Beskar Trooper program, his self-cloning vanity project, criticized as unauthorized spending. The Empire didn't die. It just developed middle management. Everyone has their own pet project, their own definition of what the Empire should become. Gideon wants personal power through Force-sensitive clones. Hux wants institutional continuity through Palpatine. Palaeon wants military coherence through Thrawn. They all agree the Empire must return. They just can't agree on whose Empire it should be. But that's what makes them dangerous. Redundancy. If Gideon fails, Necromancer continues. If one warlord gets captured, the structure survives. The New Republic sees individual problems. The Council is the problem, and nobody in the Senate even knows it exists. Everything that happened to Din Djarin was never local. It was always one node in a network designed to outlast any single point of failure and eventually crystallize into something the galaxy would come to know as the First Order. But if the Council is the blueprint, then the man they're all waiting for is the Builder, and he's closer to returning than anyone realizes. The rise of Grand Admiral Thrawn. For years, the Shadow Council spoke about Thrawn like he was a prophecy. Palaeon insisted his return would unify everything. The warlords bickered and hoarded resources and ran their own pet projects, but they all deferred to this one name, a general lost beyond the edge of the known galaxy. And here's the thing, he actually lived up to it. Thrawn didn't just survive exile, he thrived in it. When Ezra Bridger and those Purrgil dragged him into another galaxy entirely, he ended up on Paradea, an ancient Night Sister homeworld so far from civilization that no hyperspace lane could reach it. Most commanders would have crumbled, lost discipline, watched their troops turn on each other within months. Thrawn kept his garrison intact for over a decade. His stormtroopers, the Night Troopers, walk around in armor that's literally cracked and shattered from years of combat and attrition, held together by golden seams and strips of crimson Night Sister cloth. It's kintsugi, the Japanese art of repairing broken pottery with gold. These soldiers are broken, and the repair itself is the statement. They endured, they held, but Thrawn didn't just maintain a defensive position and wait for rescue. He built an alliance with the Great Mothers, the Night Sister matriarchs still living on Paradea. This is where it stops being a military story and starts being something closer to myth. You've got an Imperial Grand Admiral, the coldest strategic mind the Empire ever produced, forming a pact with ancient dark sorcerers from another galaxy. Imperial doctrine fused with Night Sister magic. Calculated, ruthless efficiency married to forces that defy rational explanation. It's the kind of hybrid threat nobody in the main galaxy is remotely prepared for. And his retrieval wasn't some lucky rescue mission. Morgan Elsbeth, working with those same Great Mothers, constructed the Eye of Sion, a colossal ring-shaped hyperspace vessel powered by engines ripped from superstar destroyers, capable of jumping between galaxies. The sheer engineering required to build something like that, in secret, while the New Republic wasn't paying attention, tells you everything about how deeply the Remnant's roots go. The moment Thrawn boards that ship to return home, he doesn't celebrate, he doesn't reminisce. He immediately prioritizes loading cargo, Night Sister coffins, dormant forces, strategic assets. Every square meter of that vessel gets filled with things that will serve the war to come. Sentiment gets zero consideration. That's the difference between Thrawn and every other Imperial warlord we've seen. Gideon wanted personal power, Price wanted control, the Shadow Council wanted status, Thrawn wants victory, and he will strip every resource from every situation to achieve it without a single wasted movement. For Mandalore specifically, Thrawn represents something uniquely terrifying. This is an adversary who studies cultures, who respects warrior traditions enough to understand exactly how to exploit them. He won't underestimate Mandalorian resolve. He'll weaponize their honor codes against them, turn their predictability into vulnerability. The Western is officially over. A general has returned from beyond the stars with an alien army and dark magic allies, and the fragmented New Republic hasn't even noticed yet. But someone has noticed, and that's where things get interesting. The New Republic Defense Fleet Alliance. Here's the thing about everything Din Djarin built, every alliance, every battle, every hard-won victory. It wasn't enough, and the reason it wasn't enough has nothing to do with him. It has everything to do with a galaxy that refused to take its own survival seriously. Captain Carson Teva is the most important character in The Mandalorian that nobody talks about. This guy is a New Republic X-Wing pilot patrolling the Outer Rim, and he keeps stumbling into to the same truth over and over. Something bigger is happening. He crosses paths with Din repeatedly, watches Imperial remnants operate with increasing boldness, and does what any rational person would do. He reports it up the chain, and nobody listens. When Pirate King Gorian Shard attacks Navarro with a full fleet, Greef Karga sends a distress call to the New Republic. Teva personally flies to Coruscant, walks into the bureaucratic machine, and begs for reinforcements. He gets stonewalled by paper pushers like Colonel Tuttle, who treat an active invasion as a zoning dispute. But here's where it gets darker. Elia Kane, a former Imperial officer now embedded inside the Republic itself, actively sabotages his efforts from within. The rot isn't just incompetence, it's infiltration. So Teva does the only thing left. He goes to Din and the Mandalorians directly, and they save Navarro, not the Republic. A handful of jetpack-wearing warriors and one bounty hunter with a conscience. After that, Din enters a formal arrangement as an independent contractor hunting Imperial remnants for the New Republic, which sounds official until you realize what it actually means. He's a deniable asset, operating outside the chain of command, doing the Republic's dirty work so they don't have to acknowledge the threat exists. Sound familiar? It should, because that's exactly what the Resistance becomes 30 years later. Unofficial, underfunded, and right about literally everything. The New Republic demilitarized after the Battle of Jakku, mothballed capital ships, relied on local planetary defense forces, and a skeleton federal navy. They were so afraid of becoming the Empire that they forgot what the Empire actually looked like when it was still small, when it was just warlords and secret councils and infiltrators whispering in the right ears. And that's the thesis of the entire show. The Mandalorian was never just about one bounty hunter finding his humanity through a green child. It was about how free societies fail, how democracies treat existential threats as someone else's problem, how they outsource survival to marshals and mercenaries and informal coalitions instead of building the coordinated response that might actually work. Carson Teva is Cassandra screaming into the void, Elia Kane is the poison already in the bloodstream, and Din Djarin, for all his bravery, is a band-aid on a wound that needs surgery. Every viewer knows what comes next. The First Order rises, the Hosnian system burns, everything Din, Bo-Katan, and Teva built together, all of it is not enough to stop what's coming. Not because they failed, because the galaxy let them fight alone. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.